I've been boycotting it.
Is that clever? Will you show them?
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think it's very clever. It's eye-catching.
We came, when the one day it rained and came in here,
Yeah,
and he had that sign.
yeah,
I kind of forgot about it.
yeah. I like it. I think it's very clever.
Because they have other companies.
Yeah.
Annoying. Okay, let's get started. So we'll open up the meeting and is everyone happy with the minutes from last meeting?
Not quite. Not quite. So we need to have names associated with who made the motion and who seconded it.
We do?
Yes, that's the law.
All right.
You looked that up?
No, but I know it, and I talked to Dave, and he did not agree with me necessarily, but I talked to Tom Kennedy, and he did agree with me.
I agree with you too, but
I didn't have to, I was,
From here on, I will do that.
all right, thank you. I thought you always did.
No, I don't.
well, you
Really?
did here.
I know.
Well, I didn't put in who seconded.
Well, I know it was for the new business, it was Matt for the 3 and
This
Bill.
guy over here.
This guy, I was gonna say this guy, seconded all of those. But then for Blood Hill Trail, no. So,
All right, I didn't know it was that.
yeah,
You'd be happy if we do it right
From
from
here
now on?
on, or do you need it in the?
You need it
as a
corrected.
correction?
well,
Because if you're going to require that, I'll have to go back years.
I never noticed it, but I told Dave I was up for 2 hours during the night, and I read these, like, you know, my life depended on it, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, that's the first time that's ever happened.
No, it's not.
Oh, wow, okay.
Do you think it's important?
No, we can do it from now on.
All right, from now on.
Thank you.
And if that's all.
And I do have another question. Under the Three Corners intersection, under number 1A, easements, did we actually agree that we're going to maintain the parking lot in front of Matt's?
Yes.
We did?
Oh, yeah, that right from the get-go, we talked about.
Because that is still our land, or why are we agreeing?
They're town parking spaces,
Oh, okay,
even though 1 or 1.5 of them actually are on, whatever it
On the other
is, some of them are on his land.
okay,
So he's agreed to give, and we're gonna maintain it.
okay. Thank you.
It does make sense.
That's it.
Gordon, on additions and deletions, Darren, I'll leave it up to you guys because it didn't go out in the packet, but we did get a liquor license application from the new folks at Mike's, Jake's, for a new liquor license, so it didn't go in your packet, but it came in today, so I just figured I'd throw it out there to see if it's something that you wanted to act on tonight or put it on the agenda for October 1st.
Does that have to be warned?
What's involved?
I think it's best that if it's warned
Okay.
and it go, and you guys have at least a chance to kind of read
We'll get to it next time.
a little bit of the background, but if you felt any overwhelming need to push it through, because I figured I'd provide that opportunity.
That's good.
Okay.
Gordon, if I could, I'd like to add a few quick updates and then a question to the agenda. There was a meeting with the state police last week that Dave Singer and I attended, and I'd like to report on that. The Conservation Commission has a few questions that I would like to relay to the board. And if possible, I'd like to follow up on the Board of Abatement discussion.
So, you have, I know what you're preparing, so, are you folks here for something that we should be adding to the agenda?
No, I'm just kind of here out of curiosity.
Oh, wow.
An interest, I mean,
Okay.
yep.
Okay, all right, so we'll just move along then. All right. You gonna make a rush, Craig, or you wanna sit for a bit?
Oh, I'm fine.
All right, well, then we'll move according to the way things are written down here. So the first thing is the Blood Hill Trail.
So last meeting, we essentially set that in motion, but what we didn't do was set an actual date for the site visit and hearing, and we're gonna try and coordinate that with West Windsor. Tuesday, October the 23rd at 4 o'clock for a site visit. We would be on site both trails come on the Hartland side, come right down kind of the same place, so we'd be meeting right at the end of Best Road, kind of at the bridge area before it hits Jennyville. It's right in that area there, if we can meet right at 4 o'clock. And then we need a public hearing, so after we meet, and I believe there's going to be at least one representative at our 4 o'clock meeting on site from West Windsor. That is a Heartland meeting, and then West Windsor is meeting up by on the other side, which is by Kings something Road. I can't remember what it is.
Is it Kings Highway?
Kings. They are meeting at. Let me just double check here on the time. Kings Highway, the intersection of the Kings Highway and Blood Hill Road, they meet at 4:30. If you'd like, you can kind of see the other side where where the old one was and where the new one's going to go. That's at 4:30. And then right down the road from Kings Highway to the new trail will be at 4:45. And then they start their public hearing at 5:15, but I think by the time we get back here, if we're up on Kings Highway at 4:45 to 5, you may want a 5:30 start time for your public hearing. And that would kind of coincide with our normal times anyways, so we would have a site visit on our side at 4 and then a public hearing at 5:30. And that would give you the option and opportunity to see the two trails on the West Windsor side, if you so choose.
And if I recall, the site visit is just the site visit. There's no recording of public comments. Just
Then we come back here and have a public hearing, and the notices will go out this week, and they will go out to abutting property owners, and they will also go out to interested parties such as the Horse Association, the West Windsor Moonlighters, and the Association of Snow Travelers, as well as the State of Vermont Forest Parks and Recreation, and a couple of different members of West Windsor.
So who's going to kind of lead us through the site visit? Somebody's got to.
I can do that. We will have kind of the surveyed map, and it's literally going to be, look over there, you can see the remnants of the old trail, and here's the new trail, and kind of match that up with what we
the
see.
plan was not to walk the whole thing. That's to be done at another time.
But I think you'll get a pretty good idea from there, and then if you go to the West Windsor side, I think you'll get even a better idea of the movement.
Huh.
And then again, there will be, we gave out a map last meeting, I think, and I talked to Johnson, well, I didn't talk to him, kind of heard word of mouth, their zoning administrator, that they'll try and have an actual large-size survey map for the site visit.
Yeah, because we had questions on that last map. Remember, there was some confusion.
I think he had it upside down.
I started asking questions, I'm sorry. Blood Hill or Blood,
I'm just
whatever.
going to leave it at that.
We have questions in the name.
bloodhound.
Bloodhound,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
So if you want to do a motion or something official to put in the minutes for the time of the site visit and the public hearing, that would be appropriate.
Mary O'Brien makes the motion that the board meet on Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018, at 4 PM at Best Road and Jennyville
At the
Road
junction of Best Road and Jennyville.
for a site visit of the old and new Blood Hill Trails.
Yep, Blood Hill Trail.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Matt Peeler seconds.
Can you just say one motion followed by a meeting? Or set up two motions? She's really on a roll, I can tell.
I didn't,
She's like-
actually, I didn't pay complete attention to that, so I didn't hear whether it was all rolled into
Good to
one
know,
motion or
good to
two.
know, Dave. Okay.
You know,
So-
every now and then I do wonder.
So would you like that motion to also include the public hearing at Damon Hall at 5:30 on the same evening? I could make a separate motion for
One
that?
motion will be fine.
Okay. Will you second that?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Are we having two public hearings?
Yes.
Right.
So we need to have one
Which
at
one's on this
5:30, thank you, Gordon. We need to have one at 5:30 for the,
Oh. Yeah,
let me just make sure I get the sequence right here. For the discontinuance first at 5:30, and then at 5:45, you can have it for the layout. That's kind of the way they did it.
So that's two separate hearings, you're saying?
Yeah, it's kind of two separate.
It's right at the bottom, if you've got that.
Actually, hold on just a second here.
Make
I
sure
don't
you
have
get the
it
right
with me
one
here.
first.
I thought it was the other way around.
so I think you're back to two motions.
I think so too.
Yeah.
She'll be laid out.
That's
City
the-
inspection, project planning commission, and the question of laying out a new trail.
I'll share my Cliff Bar with
First
you.
motion to lay out a new trail, second motion to discontinue.
So they did, West Windsor, which I'm simply trying to copy in here, they did discontinue first,
Yeah, that's wrong.
and then they did laying out. So you can, if you've got his notes still in front of you, then you can,
Yeah, we have to put the new.
You can go with the other
We
way
figured it out last time. We have to do the new road first.
then do the
So
discontinuance.
Don't ever want to be road
With
less.
that,
Those West Windsor
Never
folks,
with
man.
Oh.
just-
So we have to do the new road first.
Okay, so you gotta go all over again.
Okay, so,
Jim, what's his name? What is his last name?
Barlow.
Barlow.
Yeah.
Those are his instructions, so let's take it. He knows what he's talking about.
okay.
So you actually need to do,
4 motions.
sure.
Okay.
oh, come on. That's
I don't think we need motions for Windsor's, well, West Windsor too.
No.
No, but we have to do one to
I think
move the trail.
you can actually do one for the site visit for both, because it's just in one spot.
Yeah, that's,
I think we're good with just one motion on that.
Exactly.
Meet at 4:30 for the laying out and discontinuance. It's all right there, one spot. And then we'll have 2 public hearings, 5:30 and 5:45.
Okay.
Sorry.
Martha, did you get that?
No,
Okay.
but I'll get it, I understand it.
Okay.
it's gonna be okay.
So I'd like to make a motion that there be a public hearing.
A site visit.
I already did the site visit,
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
right? You got both aspects of that.
Okay.
So I'm making a motion that there's warning, how about that, for a public hearing to be held at 5:30 on Tuesday, October 23rd at Damon Hall to
Lay out
lay out
a new
trail.
legal trail on the Johannesson property, parcel number 8-29.
That's good. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Matt Peeler seconds.
Okay. We've got that straight. Any further discussion? I think we've got that right, okay. Okay, so
So-
everybody's in favor of that?
Yeah. So now I'd like to make a motion that the board warn a public hearing for 5:45 at Damon Hall on Tuesday, October 23rd, to discontinue,
For the discontinuance.
for the discontinuance of the,
Existing legal trail on the Johannesson property, parcel number 8-29.
do we have to refer to it as the Blood Hill? or-
We didn't, and they didn't, so I think just the existing is fine.
There's that confusion on the map, so let's not go there.
Okay, okay. Matt?
And I
I
would-
second that.
Okay, good, very good for that. Okay, awesome, okay,
Aye.
good.
Yeah.
You got all that? You will get it, okay, good. So that's about all there is to this, I guess. Make sure we show up there on the 23rd.
Yeah, I'll put those notices out, it needs to go in the newspaper as well, actually, so. Do that.
Gary?
Question, is the board going to review, in other words, walk the proposed new trail at some point before it's adopted?
You have done it?
No, I
No.
did some of it, but not the entire thing, and you've,
I walked it
Yeah.
and with Rob Anderegg, we both walked it.
How far is it?
yeah. Gary, you walked it this weekend?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
How long will it take, Gary?
It's half, 2/3 of a mile or so. It's a real easy walk.
Oh, that's all it is?
Yeah.
Couldn't we
If you're
walk
just
up
gonna
on the
walk
site visit?
the new proposed route. The old route is rather interesting to see what's happened there with regards to erosion. If you wanted to review that for the purpose. My impression was that it seemed like the proposed route in general looked pretty good, but there are some things that are going to need some good attention to make sure that erosion doesn't happen and end up with the same problem as the old current road or trail. And there's one short section near the top, closer to the West Windsor town line that is, it's a bit on the steep side. And I just have some concern, especially given that it's going to be heavily used by horses, that it may not hold up all that well over the long haul. And just think it would be wise to go out with a keen eye, looking at terrain, and make sure it's the best choice.
Number 8-29.
Dave, would it be okay if we looked at the trail prior to this date?
Would be fine.
Because I think the responsible thing to do probably would be.
Yeah, and maybe we should, obviously, be most concern is on the Heartland side,
Yeah,
but we could contact a member or two of the board, or is it Martha
Harrison?
and maybe get some of their members to join us for a walk. I'd be happy to do that
You're gonna have to
sometime this
warn
week.
that, you may have to warn that as a town, as a select board meeting.
Yeah.
if we're all gonna go.
There's been some,
Well, that's fine. It's no big
Yeah.
deal.
there's been some that, if you meet in passing at a different meeting or something, you don't need to warn that, but I think this would be a premeditated
Yeah,
Okay.
get together, so it would need to be warned.
can you handle that, Phil? Try to figure out a date and.
Sure, I
and
can
get everybody together.
poll everyone, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Do you ever do doodle polls?
I can do that.
There is.
I don't, but, yeah, will everyone else be able to do it?
well,
A doodle poll? Have you all
do
done
we
this?
need to do all that?
Yes. It just makes it easier. 5 people, different dates, different times.
Okay.
It's very easy.
I know you did it before.
Yeah. I can do it.
I can figure it out.
Yeah, you can
Do
do it.
we do it late one day before it's dark, or do we need to look for a weekend?
I think any time from now until then,
Okay,
whatever works for everyone.
okay.
Well, not in the rain.
It's a good idea.
I'm sorry?
5 o'clock, it's to be light out.
Yep, till 6:15 or something.
Yeah.
So would that be best for you?
Yeah, but
Well, so how about this week sometime?
Oh, okay.
Because
We need 24 hours to warn it.
Oh, yeah.
Or 48.
He's got a warrant.
24 for a special meeting.
I'm sorry?
You
24
need
hours to
24
warn it.
hours for a warning.
Okay.
So,
Okay, I'll look for Thursday or Friday of this week. Maybe Thursday has rain, so I'm not sure.
that sounds
Yeah, I
good.
think I can-
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
And then I'll
I
let you-
can't do Friday afternoon, but
Okay.
I can do
you've already walked it.
earlier. I have walked it, yes.
Get ahead of myself here.
They've laid this out along their boundary line, haven't they? The whole thing
They did, yeah.
with
Yes.
no, not necessarily any regard to terrain.
I'm really not sure. I know how the landowner, the surveyor, and the trail creator came together on the West Windsor side. I don't know that background. No. But you're right, it is on that far boundary side.
Do you think the steep part is in Hartland or West Windsor?
I thought it was in West Windsor, yeah.
First of all, it appeared that from the Heartland, West Windsor town line, the trail follows the boundary line of stone wall to the south. But then from the boundary line going northward in Heartland, it's just through a parcel that either Rich Sargent or somebody newer owns now, going down to Westford.
Well, we understood that this same person owns it all the way to Best Road.
Yeah,
Sargent's
they have
still
3
on there.
parcels, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
And Ted Siegler, I thought he said that he thought it was, the terrain was all right.
Well, and we had Rob see some erosion, so
Well,
it's been a mixed report.
horses are really hard on trails, worse than anything with wheels, so. If they will build water bars, which don't bother horses, that might be just fine. They're usually pretty good about trying to do it right, the horse people,
Yeah, yeah.
so. Oh, I agree with Gary, we ought to take a look. So. Okay, is that it? Does that cover that?
Yes.
Okay. So we just move on to list your appointment. Craig Smith is here. I've never met you before, but I got your name.
We met at the 4th of July briefly.
Oh,
We talked about some butternuts.
so you want
Meet
to
a lot of people.
enlighten us to why on earth you want to do this?
Well, I'm a licensed plumber. I've been doing plumbing work for the last 27 years. I moved here from Delaware. So I'm semi-retired in the plumbing field. After purchasing my property in Hartland, May of 2017, a few months went by and I came into the town office to do some research on the property. I met the listers. I went upstairs and met Clyde and the other people who helped me navigate through some records. And I got to thinking, and I spoke to Doug. Seems like it would be a nice group of people to work with there. And maybe on a part-time basis, since I'm still semi in the plumbing. And Doug said that's a possibility. There could be an opening coming up. But at the town hall meeting, at the voting, I didn't get as many votes as Stacy, so Stacy filled that position, which I'm happy for. And recently, Doug let me know that there was a resignation in the department, so I just thought it was a good opportunity, and I'm enjoying living here in Hartland, and I love the history, and I like geography, I like buildings, I know quite a bit about the construction industry. And I thought I'd be an asset to the listers department. Of course, there's a lot to learn that I don't know yet.
Doug looks happy,
Being
so.
willing is the very first step.
Yeah, I mean, I spent, Rebecca and I spent a few weekends just driving on the roads, learning some of the roads, and just when you, in your head, you think you remember where a road went, it's like, wait a minute, I'm lost. So it's like,
And the GPS doesn't work.
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't work half the
lead you
time. So
astray.
I think Hartland's a great town. I love living here so far, and I think it would be a good thing for me to do in the listers department. Doug was talking about the reappraisal going on too. There could be some footwork with the company that's been hired. Start learning that process, and that sounds very appealing to me. I like getting out and doing that too. And also, what's interesting is the process. Doug's given me some information to read up on, and I didn't realize until he gave me some of the information how much the laws are actual state laws that townships have to abide by that create this fair appraisal system for everybody. So all that stuff is interesting to me.
Great.
Doug, would Craig be using the new software or some of the software itself?
Well, we haven't had a chance, I didn't want to get ahead of myself.
Should he?
Right, but, so I have given him some materials about that.
Yeah.
He would, I see a good way for him to start would actually be to shadow with Tom Kane, our appraiser who's doing all the work. Start out by holding the smart end of the tape, you know, but just to see his methodology and stuff, because understanding that is a really good base to start getting the paperwork, and then you're like, okay, it gives a good reference point. I think it's really interesting, and as well, just learning how the buildings are actually appraised. Because it's not necessarily, you know, it makes sense once you've thought about it and wrapped your head around it, but just seeing it right off the bat, you're kind of like, wow. It doesn't take him very long to go through a house, and okay, and then you see what he's looking for, you know, that's interesting in that way too. But the job in the lister's office is mostly paperwork, but it's really good to get your feet wet with the field work stuff so that you understand what all these numbers are about. And quite frankly, we've been concerned about our resources for the reappraisal stuff. So if the rule of thumb goes right, I expecting a lot of grievances and a lot more BCA action next spring. Because they say as a rule of thumb, it's roughly 10% of people in a reappraisal year would grieve, and about 10% of those would go on to the BCA. So that would mean next spring, we're looking at 160 grievances, 15, 16 BCA cases. So be running, in the office with 1.5 people in there was just, I really was trying to get some people in it. So by then, to get somebody in, and so Craig would have a chance to get an understanding of stuff that when it, for next spring, that he'd be in, we'd all get a team going here that we can move through the process in a reasonable fashion.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I don't think so.
I'll make the motion, we appoint Craig Smith Lister. Do we appoint him till March 2019,
Correct. Till next town meeting.
till the next town meeting?
Second the motion.
Any other discussion?
No, I'm delighted.
I guess you're in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can't have any grievances on your own property.
So I believe the next steps would be that Craig would go see Clyde to get sworn in and get his name, do the paperwork to get paid. Okay. That would be the next.
Yeah.
Everybody has to be sworn.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You'll be seeing my face more often then.
Great.
Okay. This next thing is get the budget.
Have a good night. Okay, good night.
Bye, Deb.
See you at 9.
So we're only 2 months into, budget is through the end of August. Being the fiscal year, July and August, we're 2 months through. So I'm not going to get too bogged down, but being 2 months through, that would essentially be about close to 17% expensed, 16.6%. And we, at the moment, are right on budget. However, I would, kind of like last year, there's always a couple places that are showing signs of distress for those particular expense line items. And this year is kind of the same. So for instance, no surprise here, under legal professional services, we are, we've spent $9,668 out of $15,500 budgeted. I expect a little bit more to come in on that even, and that is essentially due at this point almost directly towards the appeal on the grievance that we've had so far.
That one?
Yep. So far, there may be a little bits and pieces in there. I think we had a bill come in at about 8,000, so there may be some smaller stuff that we had on the side. But for the most part, that has been the one particular property tax appeal that we've been working on. The other place that I will highlight, and this will be a thorn as well, is on page 6 of 20, would be the activity center. So we have spent $6,700 to date. It's actually over budget on the repairs and maintenance. Josh Boynton is, for the most, he's done on the front clapboard and the clapboard on the building. He's got a little bit more to do on the interior along the front window wells. He's got a little bit more to do there to bring us into compliance, but that will add to that. We still have a second bill for the painting to go yet as well, but I would expect Josh's work actually to be more down to the capital improvements, but either way, we didn't budget for it. And those two things are going to be some stressors on the budget. At the moment, in the general fund, those are the two items that are distressing us at the moment, both the activity center and the legal fees that I talked about. In the highway department, we are again running on budget. At the moment, the two places to watch here will be the subcontracting, as I've mentioned the last two or three meetings. Bills really haven't come in yet, but the hauling that we've been doing on the hard pack and that we've been laying down on most, if not all, of the major roads, that will push that up and over. And also, and this is kind of a budgeted overage, I presented this in the, I had kind of a little sheet for you last meeting on the fund balance in the highway fund, and we didn't do any paving last fiscal year, and we're going to carry over and do some paving this year above and beyond. And the fact that we didn't do it last year provided a positive fund balance, and we'll utilize that fund balance for the paving for this year, which is in particular on the Brownsville Road. There. So those two items, I would expect to see overages on that. And otherwise, we're pretty well running on par, and the departments, the individual departments themselves are running as they should be. And it's still early, but that's kind of what I see going forward.
I have questions. So, just a minor question. So when it says period 2, that actually means the month, the second month?
Correct.
Okay. On page 3, under expenditures, there's a line item for water for the Foster Meadow Library. There's nothing in it, but why would there be that? Was that water testing? I just...
It may have been at one point in time. I think that the water testing comes in under the rec center at this point in time, under that building. But there is testing that the water feeds through the rec center, feeds both the rec center and the library.
Oh, okay.
So that could be a part of it. I don't know other than that.
Sure,
And then
on
the,
page 3.
Yeah, way at the bottom.
Yeah, it's at the very bottom, Gordon.
It's
then
actually
the-
the last line.
and then the activity center also gets tested as well, I believe.
Yes,
And,
yeah. I think because there are children there.
Yep.
So on page 10, under miscellaneous, there's a miscellaneous,
Yep.
and it's 75,000.
Yep.
What was that?
So if you remember, and this is a little complicated, but so if you remember, we had a deficit in the general fund we were trying to claw back from.
Yeah.
So we needed to raise more money in the general fund. We essentially needed to create a surplus in the general fund for this year to claw back some of the surplus that we have in the general fund. So I'm just going to pick a number, $100,000 deficit that we had in the general fund. We utilized, we're forecasting, it was kind of difficult, but we forecasted the need for $75,000 to try and bring that back into balance. So we essentially had to create a surplus, create an expenditure that would create the need to raise taxpayer money in the amount of $75,000. That was then simultaneously offset in the highway department, the same number, 75,000 and whatever. We utilized fund balance in the highway department. So if you go to the revenue sheet, I think you should see a fund balance revenue line item of 75,000 with no expense line item there. So they offset it, essentially meaning that it didn't affect the tax rate, but you created $75,000 worth of money to go through the, to the deficit in the general fund. And that was kind of, we talked about that in the budgetary time, we talked about that at town meeting actually as well, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that whole process. I didn't know where it was in here.
Yep.
All right, thank you. And then one more thing, on page 12, towards the bottom, town bridges. So we're accounting for those differently. It's like everything else, we're not showing anything, because there's no money in that to take care of town bridges. Is that?
So town bridges is in actual, I don't want to try and stay out of the weeds here. If we had to expend for a bridge today, we would need to do that, and the money would come out of the highway fund, essentially, or would come out of somewhere. It's a quirk we need to fix in NIMRIC. I believe it's its own fund. But we don't budget anything for that. We haven't, to my knowledge, expended anything out of it for bridges. But as I think you brought up last meeting or the meeting before, we do have 3 covered bridges, various other bridges that we should maintain, and we don't have anything saved up for that, so it would be problematic. So we don't have anything budgeted for it, and we don't have any, so if something were to happen, we would be looking at places for that.
So is there any ongoing maintenance? I don't even know how our covered bridges are cared for.
We have done maintenance to those.
But is it an annual thing?
I think it is as needed, and it's been pretty minimal. I think they replaced the treads, was it 2 years ago, maybe, Gordon, or something like that?
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It was minimal, like with $2,000.
Well, that's minimal. I guess I'm just asking, are they included in the regular summer maintenance, looking at them and assessing them?
So most of them get inspected by the state.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the inspection part of it's okay, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it is a component of our roads. I don't know what has transpired before. At the moment, we've been pretty preoccupied with the dirt roads and then the paved roads.
Right.
Bridges is kind of on the horizon there. There is some programs with the state of Vermont, much like the class 1 and 2 grant money with the state of Vermont. There's also a similar bridge program as well, which a lot of the towns tap into for some of their maintenance. But I don't know a program that we've been maintaining and looking at them and inventorying them, but we need to do that with our paved roads as well, to be honest with you.
Okay. So do you think going into the new budget season that we should be putting money in here?
I think that we need to, if you do, I would kind of put a blanket number into like a reserve account, because I don't have, and I don't think I will have by November, a number to give you that we should be putting into bridges, other than the fact that it would be good to have something.
Yeah, just anything.
Starting to build up to it.
Yeah.
I don't have an educated feel for, okay, next year we're gonna need $5,000, the year after that we're gonna need $7,000 or something. At the moment, I don't have that. But it would be wise to be thinking ahead at some point.
Okay. So you think you'll plug something in there?
That will be part of our discussion. I will look at what we've got set up for reserve funds and where the bridges fit into that, and then take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
You done?
Well, no, I have one more thing. On revenue, current taxes is about in the middle of the page 1. Estimate is 1 million, received to date 6,800,000.
Yeah, we need to do it, at some point, we'll need to do an adjustment. So when we send out the tax bills, it just makes one big account receivable, essentially, instead of revenue. So a good hunk of that is actual school.
Okay, thank you.
So, I did see that, but I think it's a good indicator of just how much goes to the school compared to the town. But for what it's worth.
Yeah. That's it.
The keeping of taxes, the collection of taxes up to your expectations, or?
I won't, I don't have a general feel for it until till February, on the second one, but.
Of course, but you should also hope that people pay both installments,
Yeah.
the way it's billed.
So I've got a question or an observation. Did you want to go first?
To answer your question on the school tax, so I made an entry today. I took it out of there because the state's running behind on what we're supposed to pay the school. I finally got the email today, so I moved 5.4 over. So Monday, there'll be a check for 2.2 to go to the school. We sent them $500,000 2 weeks ago. And we're going to send them 2.2, I believe, next Monday. And then the other half will be next month, in February. I'm withholding $100,000 of the total. Last year, we picked up $87,000 from what we were supposed to send. So instead of them giving us a check, we'll hold it. So we'll do the accounting on our side, and if we got to pay them a few more dollars, we will, but for the most part, because it always seems to get adjusted in April.
So you said 5 something?
5.4, I believe it was. It's up like 248 or 52,000 over last year. Before it's reconciled. So last September's bill was 5.2, this year's 5.4, and then it got reconciled in April. And we picked up $87,000.
Thanks, Martin.
You're welcome.
So on page 10, Dave, where it says Jamie Lawrence Memorial Expense, and it's 0 all the way across. I think just within the last week or two, there was a $7,800 check that should have come out of that.
So this would be for the end of August, Matt. So if it came through in September, it's not popping up on this.
Oh, all right.
That was for the tennis court?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and then my other question is, bear with me 1 second. Where do we see our repairs and maintenance in the highway fund?
Yep. So go to, I've spent some time on this. So go to page, and I hope that this is clearer actually at this point, Matt. So go to page, let's see here. Page 12. At the very end of page 11 and page 12.
Oh, all right.
So before, we had to piece together every piece of machinery to figure out how much we were spending in parts or maintenance or something to that effect. So for instance, now you can look at it and you can see fuel, we've spent $1,800. Maintenance, we've spent $3,053. So we've kind of, the presentation on that is easier for us from a management perspective, get a grasp on that question, Matt.
So maintenance is really a repair though? Or this?
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yep. Maintenance and repair kind
Yep.
of falls under the same.
Yep.
So what we did this year is we tried, and I think it'll be interesting to see where it kind of falls. I just kind of looked at years previous, and we had never really budgeted these numbers before. So I kind of took a crapshoot and kind of said, okay, based upon years prior, and this isn't including last year, because maintenance was much higher last year than it had been trending. So based upon those numbers, I was like, okay, I'm gonna guesstimate $36,300 for maintenance, and $41,000 for fuel. So we're starting to try and, get an understanding of that and a budgeting aspect of that. Because where this also helps is that at the end of the day, if you see at the bottom of that particular of equipment itself on the top of page 12, where it says total equipment, $280,000. That's how much the highway department, both winter and summer, was sending to the equipment fund. But we never really had a guesstimate or really a true understanding of what out of that was going to be maintenance and fuel and loans and stuff, leaving us with how much was going to be left for future maintenance. So if you look at that equipment reserve, that's what I'm guesstimating out of that 280, that 143,685.
Yeah, that's what you're hoping.
Is if past trends hold true, then we should come close to 143,685.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to go towards the true equipment reserve of buying future trucks. Now, last year, I think that the maintenance was higher, plus we purchased a truck, so I think that money going to the reserve was lower. But it's giving us just a little bit more, education to the process. We're looking at this more on a month-to-month basis than maybe we did in the past. So really the only difference between the way we're doing it. And if we really want to know, like we did before, because it broke out everything by individual truck, Martin and Allison, they can click on maintenance and, we can look at a detailed.
So you're still...
We can look at all the invoices that were there. We can say, okay, and Bill is still marking truck 4, truck 6,
you're still tracking
whatever. So it'll be a little bit more work for us now to piece together which truck, but generally it stands out pretty quick that, okay, truck 6 and truck 5 are really problematic because you see all the invoices. And now in the equipment fund, you'll see mostly zeros, with an exception of an outright purchase.
So that equates to about half and half for money spent and money in reserve, what you've just talked about.
Going to reserve,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that, what I'm getting at here is equipment reserve, does that actually exist?
It does. It's its own separate fund, yeah. That's what we purchased when, in November, when that 10-wheeler comes in, the one that we just, about a month or two ago purchased, that check will be written out of that particular fund. Yeah.
That's good. Anyone else have any other questions about this?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay.
Anything we should know about the revenue side here? I don't know what we already talked about, school taxes.
At the moment, no.
Okay. to you here now. Conservation Commission, police, and Board of Abatement.
Okay, great. Let's do the Conservation Commission first. I attended their meeting last Wednesday evening, and they are, there were 2 items on their agenda that they kind of were asking for a little follow-up. The 17-acre wood, they, first, some positive news. They received a funding from the Wellborn Ecology Fund to design the trail that's been talked about on 17 acres.
Is this down here?
The Heartland.
Behind the school.
Behind the school?
School.
Because the other woodlot up in Jennyville is about the same size.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so-
Yeah,
Don't remember
this needs a
exactly.
name.
Yeah, okay.
The Wellborn Ecology.
Ecology Fund, I believe, and I think Wellborn is one word. And I don't have the exact dates of when that's going to happen, but that's been something they've been looking for, and of course they may have a design, and then the question is, how is the trail going to get built, but that's not that. The real issue that was a question became the encroachment of the landowner that's currently on that tract of land. And I know they've approached Dave, I think they've approached you, and it seems to be a little confusing, as that there was an agreement maybe with Bob Stacy, with the current owner, but I'm not sure what was officially done or not. But so some members of the Conservation Commission are basically saying, hey, we're about to move on designing some trail, and we have that area is getting some positive publicity because of the way the school uses it, and there's a film, and that film's being shown in a number of places. So I guess it's just the encroachment piece that is hanging out there.
I really don't see it as a problem. We've already talked about it once, so I don't know why we're talking about it again.
So we're just going to leave the...
It's fine. It's fine with me. I mean, it's not an eyesore, and I thought we already came to a decision 2 years ago about it, but.
Well, if he's going to be on our land, we need to give him permission to be there so that he doesn't someday claim that it's...
No, I thought we did give him permission.
Yeah, and we probably have to renew that permission, but I think it would be neater to give him a deadline, a very comfortable deadline to just move back onto his own land. I don't think he needs to be on our land.
Does he think he's on his land?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think he does at this point.
No.
He may have made a mistake in the beginning because it looks like it's all his, but
Is there a clearly surveyed map?
yeah, there was some question about whether the pin got moved or not.
I do remember that discussion.
Yeah. But
It'd probably be a good idea just to formalize it, have it in writing somewhere, right? That this is our land.
it would make a lot of difference if the school for some reason, wanted to do something with that little strip of open land. I don't know how wide it is. It's not.
I don't either.
But you can see it on the map. If they wanted to do something that was educational, I don't know, whatever they do, then we might want it. But as far as what he's doing at the time, it doesn't really impact anybody.
Except it doesn't set a good precedent,
No. But
right? I mean, I want to go and put a camper on town property.
Can I interject?
Yes.
We're talking about like 8 to 10 feet of property here.
Mhm.
This is, you know, I understand the conservation committees, I don't know how many times I've told them, just, you know, it's on the list. You know, we've got some pressing issues here that, you know, I understand as a conservation committee, they're taking some responsibility for this property, but let's kind of keep it in proportion of things that are out there. You know, it's important to them, but, you know, I need to kind of keep you guys focused a little bit, and myself, and there is a bit of quicksand to this issue, so I would, you know, it's bad enough dealing with the Blood Hill Trail, you know, type thing, so that's just my thoughts at the moment.
So we
You know,
could
this was an
agree,
issue 2 years ago, it's an issue now, but, you know, so are some other fairly large issues.
maybe we could revisit this in 6 months?
We said that 3 months ago, but.
We did?
We
Yeah, I
did.
don't think it's any rush, but I also think, Dave, that there's another building that's well way over, next to the woods, it's a lot more than 8 feet off their property. I don't know what, a little building. Is that right? Am I remembering right?
What was brought to my attention was this camper that's a part of the relationship of that house or whatever it is there, and it comes up in the summertime or something to that effect.
It's a business, it's a shop or something.
It was put to bed, but that's been resurrected, and it's unclear as to what was put to bed and being resurrected, so I'm just, that's my 2 cents.
So maybe we could tell the Conservation Commission that we will revisit this.
I told him that like
Yeah,
34 days ago, but you know, it's
To Rob's credit, he did say
partially,
the other commissioners wouldn't let Rob back down, but Rob basically, I think, is realizing that it's on the list. So,
You know, they might want to consider that they might want to get into that property off this other person's property before they go in there and asking him to move his stuff. I mean, we could get along, and maybe he's got something the Conservation Committee might want too. But
Access?
go ahead.
A road that's all built.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we're neighbors.
Okay. Again, I'm just,
The bearer of bad news.
the second Conservation Commission was just a heads up. They, there was a long discussion on the impact of the emerald ash borer. It happened to be right around the same day or two after the Valley News did, and they're wrestling with how they can begin to do an inventory of ash trees, and I don't know how to tackle that are along the roads that could have an impact on the town highway crew. So I just wanted to mention that the EAB may not come to Hartland, or it could, and I know there's a lot of ash trees along the roads, so it was just a heads up on that.
I think there's not much question about whether it's going to come or not. It's more when.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 years, maybe.
Is there any way to prevent it from, on individual trees, like on
There is. You can inject a systemic insecticide.
Which has to be repeated.
Every 2 years or something like that. It's fairly expensive. That's what it said in the Herald about the trees in Rutland.
So I'm not saying for the town, but for individual homeowners, if they want to preserve their ash trees.
Yeah.
I didn't read that. That's good to know.
I think if you look along the roads, there are a lot of ash trees.
Really?
And
Oh, yeah.
some of them are
An
big.
awful lot, and
Oh,
in my
God.
own wood lot, I have very healthy ash trees, and I have some that are dying, and it's not from the EAB, it's
Yeah.
from whatever else is getting it. Okay, just moving on.
If they would like to do that, I would say that would be a really good thing for the.
Yeah,
for
I think
us
they
to
were
have.
trying to mathematically say if they do certain sections of the Harlan-Queechee Road or Route 12 or whatever, can they then multiply it out and suggest that there will be this many ash trees along there?
Yeah. Well, as an example, if we had, I'm just throwing a number out there, but
Yeah.
we might have 500 ash trees of a foot or bigger. along town roads. That's just, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And if it came to town and moved through fairly quickly, and within 2 or 3 years, those trees were all dead,
Yeah.
this would be a
Big expense.
big problem. Now, a lot of them could just be toppled over into the woods, but a lot of them couldn't be too.
Yeah.
Um,
Hopefully 75% of them are the power company's problem.
That's good.
They'll make it our problem with our bills, so.
That's true, too.
You know?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Moving on.
Sure.
Dave Singer contacted me after some discussions on the street on rural safety. And Dave actually, Dave Singer, set up a meeting in Waterbury with the head honcho of the state police, Colonel Birmingham. I think the first female Major Ingrid Jonas, and our district captain, Jim?
Farmer, Roger Farmer.
So last Friday, Dave and I went up to Waterbury, and they met with us for at least an hour and a half. I was quite surprised that we were talking along. A couple of thoughts, and Dave helped correct me on this part. They're feeling the fact that they're level funded by the state, so they're in an economic pinch. They have created in the last couple of years a lot of special units. So the state police has a different mix than it did before, because they have they've always had an arson unit, but now they have software detection sort of for software breaches. And these units are used throughout the state, even in Burlington and those places like that. So they're stretched. We were one of, I think he said 5 or 4 other towns had come to say, we're thinking about rural safety, and things have changed in town over the last year with various incidents. So it was not, they weren't surprised that we weren't the first one in the door. He spoke, the colonel spoke about the press at the state level by one of the legislatures to push law enforcement to the local level. And I think he felt that successfully for now that's been squashed, and that it still will be. We talked about the pitfalls of the contract sort of side, and that we and the fact that the officer may be 30 minutes away or 40 minutes away, and just what do we get? The one thing that they did talk about and spent some time talking about is they recognize that there has to be a new model, and that as a statewide force, they'll always be the statewide force. So, and they have duties that will always sort of fall under that. And they have these special units, which will probably continue, I'm sure. But they're working on a model where, with either the town or one of the Waterburys, where this town had its own police force, but they stopped that, and they're working with the state police on a model where, for a fee, Waterbury has 2 state policemen that are totally assigned to Waterbury, and that's their job, whether it's 8 to 5 or whatever it is. They're not in Stowe, and they're not in Duxbury or whatever towns are around there. the state police like that model because they can basically, they have the infrastructure from a human resource and the benefits section and so on and so forth to manage those people. So they're still on the state police payroll. The town isn't responsible for that. The money that the town pays to the state police is in turn used to hire 2 new people to fill those 2 slots that went out to Waterbury. So it's not a loss of personnel at the state level. So it's a model that's working. We cordially said we'll stay in touch as things develop in our community, and I think that's about all I can really.
So you think they are thinking about expanding that idea to other towns?
It's a prototype experiment right now, and we've asked to sort of, could we find out how it turns out so that we could do that. One of the things they clearly said is, you have to come to us with what you need. So we have to decide what is a safe community, what we want from policing, so on and so forth. And they would possibly fit the budget, to that, or whether we have 1 policeman or 2, I don't know. It seems to be working now. Dave, I don't remember if it's a year old or.
No, I don't think it's quite that old. I think it's more from like winter time, past springtime, somewhere there.
And those 2 men are the same man always?
They opened the job as a job within the state police, Waterbury, and they then become the same person. And if one of those people decides that it's not working out, then they would leave. So one of the strengths of this position is that they, the time when they're not running around chasing crime or doing law, they can actually do community connection. They can follow up on things. Okay, there was a breakdown.
At the school?
We didn't talk about schools. School safety was very big, and I honestly just didn't know where we were at with school safety and that. But it would be a community ability. They felt that the officers would be known, to answer your question, Gordon. They would be.
Well, it seems like there's some advantage to having different people come along, but it might be really better if they were employed by the state police, but they actually lived in the town.
Yeah.
And when they were off duty, they would be part of the community.
Part of the community, yeah. And how many do we have 2 officers here or 3 officers?
Seems like 3 or 4 that live here now.
Yeah. So it could be something they would apply to because they didn't have far to drive, and they also are vested in the community.
And it's not all that far to the barracks in Bethel either.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that makes sense.
It sounds like an interesting model.
And I'm so real pleased. I dropped a follow-up note on the weekend to say thank you, and we would stay in touch. And in our section 5, I think the state's divided into section 5. They do have an outreach person, so that if there is a topic that we want someone to just chat with, they have that. But again, I came away feeling that they're facing some of the same issues we are. Money's scarce. Crime is changing. I'll make one more comment about crime. And what I felt good about is that they're saying, okay, what are the models work? What can we do to sort of make this work?
So if Hartland was interested in that, could we suggest that, or is it up to them to say we would offer that to them?
Well, 2 things. One, there's a price tag to it. and it's more than the 56,000 that we spent today. And that was kind of ricocheted around in my head for a while. But to answer your question, we would stay in touch with them, and then they would ask us to do that needs assessment. What are your needs? What are you looking for? I think it's such a new program that all these things are going to be worked out. I don't know, did you ask? But I don't think I did. But what were we had just received in our packets from, that Dave included in our packets last meeting about the profile of what the calls were in Hartland.
Yeah.
We're all concerned about the drug parties and shootings and stuff like that. Well, it turns out mental health is by far their biggest call. And I was chatting with a few people who were in the medical community, and they were absolutely not surprised because there is no infrastructure for when issues happen and they're mental health related. There's no good facilities or good treatments. Anyway, so I don't want to take too much time, but that's. Dave, any comments?
No, that summed it up. I think that not only towns like Hartland, but Randolph and Waterbury were relinquishing their departments. So the state police was fairly worried about picking up that call volume because they are the fallback state police. So they're looking at this like, okay, I think there was 1,200 calls come into Waterbury. So they're like, okay, that's 1,200 more calls that we're going to get.
You mean they were just eliminating their departments? Police departments?
Waterbury was, yeah. Well, there's some different thoughts on whether they're trying to, they were like a 3-year, they looked at this originally as kind of a transition between, they were revamping, maybe the right word, but they were hoping to piece it back together in a few years. But they did away with it, so the state police was kind of like, what can we do? Because obviously this is going to taxi us even further. And Waterbury approached them, and they put together this model to kind of that fit Waterbury, and it also helps keep the local issues local so that they can continue to focus on their overall duties. It's kind of an interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for going to that.
I was pretty impressed with the fact that 3 of these guys said, the runs of Vermont State Police, he took
The whole brain trust was in the room with us, yeah.
I was very well-spoken guy, I thought I was very impressed with the guy.
Great.
For what it's worth.
Yeah, and again, thanks to Dave Singer, who's, you all know, is passionate and has good cause for a lot of what he's talking about, and it sounds like a broken record sometimes, but he took the initiative to sort of set this up. So.
Wow, that's great.
Okay, Dave, you want to update us on notes, lockup?
So last Tuesday, when I was putting this together, we had just met Monday night, so there wasn't a whole lot to put together. But so Saturday, Heartland Community Connections breakfast. I think I put something out to you guys last week, and then a blurb kind of hit the listserv kind of through the week there. The topic, it was put together by Mount Escutney, I can't remember exactly.
Prevention
Partnership. Yep,
exactly.
Prevention Partnership, yes. And the topic was essentially socioeconomic issues confronting Heartland. In the panel, in particular, we kind of discussed how that has an effect on municipal services and municipal expenses. Some of the things that were talked about, the school talked about some of the behavioral issues that they're seeing in students today. and the amount of time that they're spending, understanding that and educating for that. And they also talked about the amount of students that essentially come to school hungry and how that affects the student learning, where they fall as well on the spectrum of the rest of the student union or supervisory union as far as free lunch program. Hartland is at 48%, which I think was the highest town in the supervisory union. So
48%.
48% of their student body is on the free lunch program.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, and there's an increase in something which I wasn't aware of, but through our two churches, there's a food program where they send food home for the weekend. Martha, you probably know what it's called.
I think they call it Friday food bags or something like that.
Yeah, just recognizing that the
They've
kids don't
targeted
have,
the families that need it.
and that number has increased this year, the number of requests for that.
Oh, my God.
Well, I think they only started it last year, but
Yeah,
I guess the
but it
word
went up
is
from
spread.
like
and-
17 or 18 to 20-something this year.
So, and John spoke about kind of the same behavioral issues that he's seeing over at the rec center and how the percentage of their time has changed from, concentrating on soccer balls to, again, student behavior. I focused on quite a few issues, the high delinquency, tax rate, trash over our banks, scrap metal or junkyards. I got illegal dumping on property itself, on their own property. I talked about trash burning that we have, and some instances that the fire department has responded to. We had a big one last fall that Woodstock also responded to. We talked about how that affects, the effect on the town. Highway crew has to go get, pick the garbage up. That's an expense to the highway crew. Every time the fire truck rolls out the garage, that's an expense to the town, expense to Woodstock, expense to the people leaving their families, expense to the grand list, that affects the grand list. Some of this, I got in a little bit about code enforcement, and we're not the strongest on the code enforcement aspect in this town, and how some of these things do accumulate, and how that ends up. The lack of code enforcement also affects essentially the grand list and tax revenue coming in, because we don't always are keeping track of families and houses moving in and development that's occurring. It's kind of a cross-section of issues, but it was kind of wrapped into that. And a couple of the other things I just talked about was, again, some of the issues in the rec center and the school, and that was kind of the impetus of kind of having this. My discussion with Windsor or Mount Escutney Prevention Partnership in being where I sit, seeing kind of a dichotomy. We have some wealth here, yet there's some underlying socioeconomic poverty issues, I think, and how that affects the town. I don't think there were any answers to any of this or any really proposed, but I think there was some comments about keeping the discussion going and meeting again.
Yeah.
So,
How many people were there?
62.
62
All down
people?
here?
Yep.
Wow.
Had breakfast and
That's
people
a
were
lot
sitting
of
everywhere.
pancakes.
I would have been there, but I had to work. I just
And
want to say
it
that.
was
I don't know why you weren't there, but.
I was working too.
it was an age mix of people. A lot of the school board members were here. Agent Hartland came up a number of times as a positive thing. And I also was just going to say that the two facilitators from Mount Escutney did an excellent job. I mean, they opened by doing the classic kind of give me what's good about Heartland, and they create a paper lists around all the walls and give me what's bad. They are writing all the notes from the open session, from the panel session, and thanks to Dave, he did an amazing job. Christine and, our rec center was well represented. But the notes should be coming, and hopefully everyone will get a chance to see them. And there was, as Dave said, the audience said, okay, now let's get into it and talk about more. It was actually similar to the response at the end of our surprise meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you for going.
Yeah.
I had intended to go, and I don't even know what I was doing Saturday, but I was not sitting around.
Yeah. Well, it felt good to see that many community folks come out.
That's great.
And we ran till 11.
wow,
Right.
I wish I had been.
that's great. I wish I
And
could
breakfast
have
was
gone.
good.
They always do.
Were they prepared to feed that many people?
I ate early, so I didn't know.
I mean, I think in general that those
Good
things are
strategy.
not.
I think
60
so,
people.
I don't,
No, they always have extra food.
yeah.
Once I've been through there.
I think there was a number of people that didn't eat. I think there
Yeah, I think
was a
some
number that
people-
came right at about 9:30.
9:30,
Yeah.
10 for just to talk.
Mm.
And I did not look at how bad parking was. So, and no one talked about that.
Good.
That wouldn't overdo it.
Yeah.
So, as kind of a follow-up, I talked last time about Stu Johnson and Todd Eaton from the Local Roads Program. I attended a seminar last Wednesday. It was their kind of basic, just general road maintenance. And they had talked to Bill about this as well, but part of that was about the sand that towns use. Actually, we talked a lot about the topping to the roads, but they talked about the quality of sand and how important that kind of was.
Is this
And
for storms or for?
Winter sand.
for winter sand during
Okay.
the snowfall. And one of the interesting comments that Stu had made to Bill, and he made to me while I was at the seminar, he kind of singled me out, which didn't make me feel all that great, but is when he was here, he noticed how, and I think I mentioned this, one of his comments was that our roads are very sandy. It's a mix of essentially sand, silty sand and rocks, the base. And that it's important to use, so the silty sand is problematic two ways. One, in the wintertime, when it gets wet, it's silty and you're not getting quite the traction. But, what you lay down in the wintertime comes around and is there in the summertime. So, what I think you're seeing in the danger to, we just laid down a whole bunch of hardpack. We still need to do more, but we're starting to make an effort at putting down some quality surfacing. So by putting essentially just the silty winter sand over it, you're essentially putting a kind of a lesser grade of topping right back over what you just put down. And what that creates is kind of a filmy surface. Phil, you brought that up the last time we talked. When it rains, that silty gets kind of filmy, and we do have that type of thing. And the recommendation is to mix perhaps some 3/8 stone or some
Manufactured sand.
Manufactured sand.
into
Or coarser.
some washed, I'm gonna have this right, some washed sand, if I have
Yeah,
that correct.
that's what they call it.
Is
Yeah,
that-
manufactured wash sand, same
Okay.
thing.
Uh,
Actually, they do wash gravel sand too, but
Right, there's
you
concrete
wouldn't,
sand.
you wouldn't buy concrete
Concrete
sand.
sand.
But you would mix this in, since we've got sand already, you would kind of mix this in, so you wouldn't be buying just an outright. So what you end up with is not just that real fine sand that we actually do have, but it would be mixed with some stone and some other stuff in there, so, which is good for the winter time, but also would mix well or better with, some of the stuff that we put down.
So that's a purchase we have to make from elsewhere, or do we have some of that?
Yeah, we would need to bring that in and mix it kind of
There's a machine that
mix it in with it.
Grind it out of the mountain out of this.
That was maybe one of the single biggest takeaways, other than, and interestingly enough, no town that was at this seminar does it now, and West Windsor was there, but, you know, Matt, you've brought this up a little bit, but the importance of compaction to the product after you grade or as you're putting the new product down, it's not an easy, you know, there is an extension to a grader that you can put on, but there's obviously, it's not a cheap little piece of machinery, it's kind of expensive, so. More and more towns are looking at it, some have kind of jury-rigged something that kind of works, but they're seeing a whole lot better result long-term once they compact it, rather than, say, raking it, so.
And Matt, I assume that compaction, you need to wet it before you compact it, or?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the moisture of the soils.
Yeah.
Actually, no, you would simply, the compactor with the roller would be right behind the grader, and you would, it's gonna roll that out, and it's gonna put some weight to it, rather than,
Big heavy wheels.
yeah, so.
I never seen non-motorized one, but.
Yeah, it's really something kind of on the newer spectrum of things, so.
All you need is a big wheel full of water, you know, just like the old days. I'm sure it's similar. I mean,
To
in
roll into
theory.
roads, yeah.
But there are some manufactured components to put on a grader that have it, and some towns have experimented. I forget what town he mentioned that actually jury-rigged something that's working out pretty good. I just found that an interesting conversation, but I think that the sand is a lot more here and now. I think the compaction would be a few years out. It would be kind of to more.
I wonder if you did that, if you had like half and half of some grit that's
That's what Woodstock mixes theirs.
something like that. I wonder if you could put on a lot less.
I'm sure you could, because a lot of this sand blows right off.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It just
Because it's not sharp.
hits the road and it looks pretty good, and 2 or 3 cars goes by and it's all in the ditch.
Or in the brook. I mean, that's the problem too,
Yeah.
right? All this
Yeah.
goes in the brook.
This sand they made might be better. There's a lot, it was gravelly. The best sand comes out of gravel.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of stone down at the pit, so it might be a little better this year. I don't.
You mean
I don't
it's,
know.
it's from the sieve, from the
Right.
screening?
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you're screening out your gravel, you get better sand. But I know in the past, the sand is, I don't even know if you can call it sand. It's probably closer to a silt.
It's very simple. Even
Very fine.
you can see the in the pile now. There is some stone on the outside, but if you put your hand into the pile, it's still pretty silty. It's pretty. Just causes problems around the calendar year. So. Anyway, Bill and I will be going to a paving seminar next week or the week after as well. I'll just hit on this. I believe this is public knowledge since, to a degree. Did meet with the lawyers at the rec center with John and Joe Olmsted Jr. Just to go over rec center policies and procedures. So that was an outtake from mediation, and it's pretty basic but helpful stuff. So that is moving along.
Is that lawsuit still being pursued?
They are kind of seeing how this process plays out, so they still have that option to do that, but I think as we move towards what was set out in the mediation steps, I think that they're, as long as we do that and they feel as though that was fulfilled, then I think that that's fine. And just today, we did receive another appeal, an appeal to the BCA decision on that particular. So we had an appeal before the BCA, which was from the Best Road property. As appealed again the BCA decision this time. So the decision that the BCA made, that property owner is appealing.
And that appeal is back to the BCA or
To Superior
to
Court.
the higher?
Oh, okay.
So we don't.
Isn't the BC decision what he wanted?
I think that's what he asked for.
Not totally.
Mammy's still on vacation, and it's...
Rob Manby spends a lot of time.
At least as far as I know. But I read it quickly. It's, we're still in public session, so I read it quickly. I think that it's an interesting argument, I'll just say that. But he has appealed it.
Okay.
I say we don't defend it. I mean, how much are we gonna spend? Do we have to defend it?
Maybe not be on our ticket now.
I think it's an executive session discussion, personally.
Get this guy. Yes, come that way. It's really something.
I thought it was supposed to rain
Ooh.
tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Wow. Beautiful.
That's not on the agenda.
That's it.
Okay. I'm supposed to have a birthday party. I'm going to be an hour and a half late, so I'm going to be going.
Before you leave,
Yeah.
our next meeting
Oh, yeah, what is it?
would be October 1st, but there are people that won't be here on the 1st.
That's okay. I won't be there.
And I won't be.
But they can meet without us. I
They
mean,
do.
they can struggle through.
Yeah, I'm here then, but I'm not here the following.
Okay, so our next meeting is October 1st.
Are you going to be back on Tuesday or Wednesday or anything like that? No, not you,
Okay.
the women.
No.
No.
I will be.
You're gonna be gone the 15th,
until
Phil?
the 8th.
I'm going to be gone. I'm going to try to, I'm leaving Tuesday on the 2nd, and then I would be back for the November meeting.
Oh.
So I'll miss the legal trail. So we were going to talk about the Board of Abatement, but should we just I'm not sure if time is tight. Maybe we
It's
should.
only actually 10 after 7 now.
Yeah, that clock.
That
is-
clock.
I know the clock is an hour and a half.
Yeah.
How did the clock get an hour
That
off?
confused me when I arrived.
Yeah.
Let's go for another hour.
I'm not sure. Well, we have to end this meeting. So is there anything else? Anything anybody wants to bring up? No. So we're done.